The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street by Rod Sterling. Act 1. Fade in on a shot of the sky. The various nebula and planet bodies stand out in sharp, sparkling relief. As the camera begins, a slow pan across the heavens. Narrator's voice. There is a fifth dimension beyond that which is known to man. It is a dimension as vast as space and as timeless as infinity. It is the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone. The camera has begun to pan down until it passes the horizon and on a sign which reads Maple Street. Pan down until we are shooting down at an angle toward the street below. It is a tree-lined, quiet, residential American street, very typical of a small town. The houses have front porches on which people sit and swing on gliders, conversing across from house to house. Steve Brand polishes his car parked in front of his house. His neighbor, Don Martin, leans against the fender watching him. A good humor man rides a bicycle and is just in the process of stopping to sell some ice cream to a couple of kids. Two women gossip on the front lawn. Another man waters his lawn. Narrator's voice. Maple Street, USA, late summer. A tree-lined little world of front porch gliders, hopscotch, the laughter of children, and the bell of an ice cream vendor. There is a pause, and the camera moves over to a shot of the good humor man and two small boys who are standing alongside, just buying ice cream. The narrator's voice. At the sound of the roar and the flash of light, it will be precisely 6:43 p.m. on Maple Street. At this moment, one of the little boys, Tommy, looks up to listen to the sound of a tremendous screeching roar from overhead. A flash of light plays on both their faces and then moves down the street, past lawns and porches and rooftops, and then disappears. Various people leave their porches and stop what they're doing to stare up at the sky. Steve Brand, the man who's been polishing his car, and now he stands there transfixed, staring upwards. He looks at Don Martin, his neighbor from across the street. Steve. What was that? A meteor? Don nods. That's what it looked like. I didn't hear any crash, though, did you? Steve shakes his head. Nope, I didn't hear anything except a roar. Mrs. Brand, from her porch. Steve, what was that? Steve, raising his voice and looking toward porch. Guess it was a meteor, honey. Came awful close, didn't it? Mrs. Brand. Too close for my money. Much too close. The camera pans across the various porches to people who stand there watching and talking in low, conversing tones. Narrator's voice. Maple Street, 6:44 p.m. on a late September evening. A pause. Maple Street in the last calm and reflective moments before the monsters came. The camera slowly pans across the porches again. We see a man screwing a light bulb on a front porch, then getting down off the stool to flick the switch and finding that nothing happens. Another man is working on an electric power mower. He plugs in the plug, flicks on the switch of the power mower off and on, with nothing happening. Through the window of a front porch, we see a woman pushing her finger back and forth on the dial hook. Her voice is indistinct and distant, but intelligible and repetitive. Woman. Operator? Operator. Something's wrong on the phone. Operator! Mrs. Brand comes out on the porch and calls to Steve. Mrs. Brand, calling. Steve, the power's off. I had the soup on the stove and the stove just stopped working. Woman. Same thing over here. I can't get anybody on the phone either. The phone seems to be dead. We look down the street as we hear the voices creep up from down below. Small, mildly disturbed voices, highlighting these kinds of phrases. The voices. Electricity's off. Phone won't work. Can't get a thing on the radio. My power motor won't move. Won't work at all. Radio's gone dead. Pete Van Horn, a tall, thin man, is seen standing in front of his house. Van Horn. I'll cut through the backyard, see if the power's still on Floral Street. I'll be right back. He walks past the side of the house and disappears into the backyard, the hammer on Van Horn's hip as he walks. The camera pans down slowly until we're looking at 10 or 11 people standing around.
Yeah, Diane started being it. I realized when I was coming in, since I'm not going to be here.
Yeah.
I just said